say. Now, on the surface, again, it does seem like my complaining about this is a little bit overreacting here because he didn't say anything malicious. He didn't say anything vicious, like anybody who deserved to have something happen to them as it happened on September 11th, 2001, etc., etc. But as I think I just saw in Mattress Man's things, he should not be using that example. He was using it as an example, but you shouldn't be using those examples. Now, on September 11th, 2001, I was teaching in Jersey City, New Jersey. I used to be a teacher, believe it or not, and I taught at a school called St. Anthony High School. The school is situated literally 2.5 miles on the other side of the Hudson River from the World Trade Center. And to say that I had a bird's eye view of the World Trade Center Twin Towers is an understatement, because driving to work every morning down Montgomery Street in Jersey City, it was almost as if they anchored the two sides of the streets, the optical illusion, one on this side and here on the other. And on that day, September 11th, it was the first day of classes. Take that back, the second day of classes, but for me it was day one because I didn't have Monday classes that year. And it was a little bit after 9 o'clock that morning. One of my colleagues knocks on the door and says, "Dude, you're going to have to go outside. The World Trade Center just blew up." And my immediate response to him was, "Don't fuck around. You can't mess around with something like that." And when he said it, I walked out the doors and looked into the gaping hole in the North Tower on the north side and could literally see inside the Twin Towers. That's how close we were. And that was my last memory and last vision of the World Trade Center standing. When he told me to go outside and look at it, I was kind of apprehensive at first, but I'm kind of glad that I did, because it was very, very, I want to say difficult, but it was the last vision that I had of the World Trade Center tower standing, because of all the ironies. That day I had classes scheduled from the first through the third period, which went from 8:30 until 11:06 a.m. So by the time I was done with my 3 classes, and we tried to conduct the day as if nothing were going on, despite the sirens that were blaring, because there were many, many rescue squads and the Jersey City Fire Department, and anybody who was coming from Jersey to get into Manhattan, the only way they could get in was via the Holland Tunnel. And the school was a block and a half away from the Holland Tunnel. And as much as we tried to keep things at a normal pace, it was very, very difficult. But I didn't have in any of those 3 classes a classroom that faced to the east, so I never got to see the towers coming down, any of the smoldering smoke, until afterwards, while many of the students at the school and teachers who had east-facing classrooms did in fact see the second plane hit. They did see what they thought were objects falling from the building, which of course unfortunately turned out to be human beings. You couldn't really make it out, but you could see the things that were tumbling. You didn't know what it was at the time. And I guess I give thanks that I never saw any of that happen as close as I was. And it was a very difficult thing when you consider that many of the kids who were there that day did see a lot of this. And I still to this day don't know how many of them got through the day. And consider this too, that there were quite a few kids who had parents working in there. It made it all the more difficult to get through September 11th, 2001. So that day for me, and the subsequent time thereafter, the months of driving into work and seeing the smoke continuously smoldering from September 11th until middle of October, smelling the smoke on days where the wind would blow east to west, and knowing that the smell that I was breathing in wasn't just the smell of smoke, but it was of burning building and burning flesh. And knowing that so many people at that time, we thought it was up to 10,000 at that point in time, because nobody knew how many people had died up to that point, because Rudy Giuliani had ordered 10,000 body bags that day, if you recall. It's something that has stuck with me all these years. And it bothers me to a very, very strong degree that there are people who don't even want to remember, don't want to pause to remember what happened on September 11th, because they say it's getting monotonous. We don't pause for Pearl Harbor Day anymore, so why should we bother pausing to remember September 11th, 2001? Well, let's remember this. The number that sticks out the most, of course, is 343, the number of firefighters who died. There were more than 100 Port Authority and New York City police officers who lost their lives, and I believe 2,823 civilians lost their lives that day. And sometimes what it takes is a reminder. Every so often on this show, I will stop in the middle of a show and play a video from September 11th, 2001 to show the audience and say, you may have forgotten about it, you may not have thought about it today, but look at this new angle that I found, or look at this plane just slicing through that building, and think about all the people who died at that moment. And yet there are people who tend to forget, and there are people who don't care, and there are people who say we give too much credence and too much time to remembering that day. The minute you stop remembering, the minute you forget what happened September 11th, 2001, is the minute you become more vulnerable, and we as a nation become more vulnerable to having a similar attack happen again. None of us want to ever go through what happened that day. None of us could probably tolerate it twice in a lifetime. But we move on. We remember. We can't forget what happened September 11th, 2001. And that's why when Dywane Wade makes a comment, as innocent as it may be, it boils my blood, because I'm going to tell you something right now. Dywane Wade was not in New York on September 11th, 2001. He may have watched it from his television. He doesn't know what it's like to have known somebody who died that day. He doesn't know what it's like to know someone who knew somebody who died that day, more than likely. And for him to have made that comment, as innocent as he may have thought it might have been, is reprehensible. He did apologize. He did the right thing by apologizing. But that doesn't take away from the fact that he did what he did, that he said what he said, and didn't think before he said it. And that's the shame of it all. The apology was nice, but the apology was clearly written by a public relations agent. With all due respect to Dywane Wade, there were words in there he probably has never, ever seen. And the truth of the matter is, he should not get away with making that type of comment. Yes, there have been worse, and there's no doubt people have made a lot worse comments about September 11th, 2001 than Dywane Wade did that day. But let's just hope that it serves as a reminder that it's not acceptable to joke around about September 11th, 2001. It's not acceptable, even if it's in jest, to make a comparison to playing basketball to what happened when those twin towers fell on September 11th, 2001. Because I'm sorry, folks, there's no comparison. You go out there, you earn your millions of dollars, you bust your ass, and you play good basketball every single night. Don't compare it to the work that the firefighters did that day. Don't compare it to the work that the police officers from the NYPD and from the Port Authority did that day. Because they're the heroes. The athletes don't come close.